you literally have millions and millions of Yemenis taken to the streets with their AK-47 rifles, vowing to defend Yemeni land if there's any type of military invasion from the U.S. or from any Western forces. And I think, in terms of an invasion on Yemen, there's really not much you can do when you have, millions of military personnel ready to fight. And in addition to that, millions of military personnel, you also have millions, and millions of Yemenis, they call them popular mobilization committees where the actual civilians are taking up arms or are engaged in military training, preparing for a potential invasion on Yemen. Well, for about a month and a half, we've seen these patterns and strategies in terms of the U.S. airstrikes, the U.S. British airstrikes on Yemen, where they seem to be targeting or trying to target weapon facilities, radars, and ultimately trying to disarm the Ansarullah Houthis' ability to launch ballistic missiles and to launch naval missiles at U.S., British, and Israeli-linked ships in the Red Sea, in the Gulf of Aden. Of course, as you know, there's a lot of activities happening in the Red Sea because of the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which is the most strategic and perhaps one of the most significant waterways in the world. According to some reports, this is a waterway that, where 6.2 million barrels of oil and natural resources flow by each and every single day. So according to the U.S., they're trying to keep this, this narrow waterway clear of any military activities from Yemen's Ansarullah Houthis. The Houthis, however, they're saying that if you want to cross Bab el-Mandeb, countries like the British, the American, and the Israeli government, they need to put an effort to stop the war that has taken place in Gaza. And of course, the tensions continue to rise there, which is why there is an escalation of military activities in the Red Sea by Yemen's Ansarullah Houthis, who have vowed that they will get revenge and vowed that they will step up their launching of missile attacks to target U.S. ships and British ships in the Red Sea.
It seems an almost impossible effort by the US and the UK. Is there any evidence at all that the Houthis' ability to strike ships has been downgraded?
On the contrary, in fact, I think we're seeing a pattern and a strategy where the more the U.S. and British carry out attacks on Yemen, like the airstrikes from yesterday, the more of a response we see from the Ansarullah Houthis, the more launching we see unfold in the Red Sea and the targeting of U.S. ships and British ships alike in the Gulf of Aden and in the Mediterranean Sea. So in actuality, the Ansarullah Houthis' ability to launch missile attacks has actually increased as the U.S. and British military offensive engages in Yemen.
The journalist in Yemen, because it's a civil war that's going on, it must be a pretty dangerous place to be at the moment.
Well, I've covered Yemen since 2015. I covered the war from 2000 and, the Saudi-led coalition war from 2015 all the way until, until now. And of course, the Saudi-led coalition was a war that was waged from 2015 all the way until 2022. There's a tentative ceasefire currently in place right now. However, that's pretty much in jeopardy with the escalation of military activities from both the Ansarullah Houthis and the U.S. And British military forces. So, it's been surreal because I was used to more unfolding here in Yemen. Of course, the Saudi-led coalition, when they waged the military offensive on Yemen, they dropped an estimated a third of a million bombs on Yemen in a time span of 8 years. And these U.S. and British airstrikes have mainly targeted weapon facilities and targeted military sites. Military sites, I might add, that they've already been cleared out. There's really no weapons or radars or launching pads at these military sites and military facilities which the U.S. is targeting, and that's mainly because these are the same military facilities, same military bases that the Saudi-led coalition bombed indiscriminately for 8 years straight. So,
what is the position of the Saudis? Because depending on your perspective, I mean, if you're a Saudi leader, you would say to the allies, the US and the UK, "We told you so. We wish you had helped us earlier." From their perspective, I hasten to add. Why aren't the Saudis now a sort of prominent member of this coalition trying to stop the attacks on international shipping?
I think the Saudis are actually more wiser than some of the U.S. and British politicians, because they've already experienced 8 years of war, whereby most of the weapons that were dropped and utilized by the Saudi-led coalition were made in the U.S. and made in the UK, right? So we're talking about a third of a million bombs being dropped in Yemen, and somehow, some way, the Ansar Allah Houthis only gotten stronger. The Houthis never used to have a ballistic missile system. They never had this type of arsenal before, until they were able to somehow, some way, develop and manufacture these ballistic missiles that are able to hit targets within a range of 2,000 kilometers, and that happened all within being bombarded by the Saudi-led coalition, which of course consisted of 14 of the most powerful nations, backed by the U.S. and British government.
So, what are the prospects of a ground invasion then?
Well, that would probably be one of the biggest mistakes that the U.S. and the British army forces can make. I don't know if you've seen the protests happening every week here in Yemen, but you literally have millions and millions of Yemenis taken to the streets with their AK-47 rifles, vowing to defend Yemeni land if there's any type of military invasion from the U.S. or from any Western forces. And I think, in terms of an invasion on Yemen, there's really not much you can do when you have millions of military personnel ready to fight. And in addition to that, millions of military personnel, you also have millions, and millions of Yemenis. They call them popular mobilization committees, where the actual civilians are taking up arms or are engaged in military training, preparing for a potential invasion on Yemen. However, if there was going to be an invasion, it would have to start from the port of Al Hudaydah, which is the area that's currently not fully under the control of the Ansar Allah Houthis, and parts of it is under the control of Yemeni forces that are being backed by Saudi Arabia and the U.S. and the British government, according to the Ansar Allah Houthis. So any type of military invasion would start from the shores of Yemen, but I can tell you that a lot of military preparations have undergone. We're talking about, vast land that is littered with landmines
Oh,
and ocean
it's
as well.
you made me even more aware of how difficult this issue is, certainly from the perspective of the allies. Yousef Mawry, stay safe. You've given us, certainly given me, a new perspective and insight into what is happening in Yemen and the issues that the allies face in trying to keep international shipping safe. Thank you so much for coming on the programme.